Math Refresh Initiative. And so just to overview our agenda for today as we kick it off, today we are announcing and launching our Math Refresh. We're going to really make the case for learning acceleration. We have a very special guest on to present some data and findings from a new national study about accelerating learning. Really digging into what learning acceleration in practice looks and sounds like, and how we support learning acceleration of our students. We'll end with a call to action and some next steps for you all as we leave today's call. It is our vision that every child can reach their potential, no matter where they're from, how much money their family makes, or where they live. And this really grounds our Math Refresh initiative as a part of our overall vision for success for our state. Our vision for Louisiana students is ambitious and attainable, and our 6 critical goals outlines a student's successful progression from birth through graduation. We know that several key things must be true to position students for success along their educational journey. Access to a high-quality early childhood experience, foundational literacy instruction, a teacher prepared to lead a classroom every single day, daily instruction that accelerates learning, and a meaningful high school experience. And so I know that it really is a perfect fit for us to ground this vision for success and launch today's webinar, which is all around our Math Refresh. So we are excited to announce this launch of our new initiative. This Math Refresh will include explicit tools and resources that equip all of you, our system leaders, school leaders, and our teachers to accelerate students' readiness to engage in grade level math in the highest quality teaching and learning environment. To make this a reality for all of our students, as Dr. Brumley stated, this Math Refresh is strategically focused in 2 key areas. 1, to provide funding to support a refresh of our math materials to ensure resources used during any instructional time, including tutoring, extended learning time, and summer learning, are of the same high level of quality as during core instruction. And 2, by releasing guidance, resources, and professional learning that support teachers and leaders with the opportunity to refresh existing instructional practices to align with evidence-based approaches for maximum impact in getting our students on track and moving forward successfully. Our Math Refresh is grounded in accelerating learning, which is both a mindset and an approach to teaching and learning, rather than a service, place, or time. Accelerating learning is a prioritization of equitable access to high-quality, grade-level instruction for all students. In mathematics specifically, this approach leverages acceleration, a high-impact cyclical instructional process that connects unfinished learning in the context of new grade-level learning, utilizing high-quality materials to provide timely, individualized support throughout a variety of flexible instructional settings and groupings. As we think about refreshing math in Louisiana, we must clearly understand the approach to accelerating math learning. 2 strategies are typically used to address unfinished learning, often referred to as student struggle in math. 1 is remediation, in which students practice skills they didn't master during previous grades. Most often we see this in a manner that's really disconnected from daily grade level work. The other strategy is learning acceleration, which begins with grade level learning, which is always the goal for all of our students. With acceleration, when learning gaps arise, students engage in those just-in-time foundational supports that are directly connected to the grade level content they are learning. We're centering our Math Refresh on 4 pillars. All of the following pillars are grounded in accelerating learning for all students. One, high impact structure designed to prioritize access to high quality grade level math instruction for all students. Just in time, proactive intervention supports that connect prerequisite learning to immediately upcoming and current grade level work. Ongoing support for teacher collaboration and quality professional development so that educators have the tools they need for success. Acknowledgement of the key role that our families and communities play in supporting math development in our students. To support Math Refresh, we are proud to announce several opportunities for our school systems coming this fall. A new Math Refresh library will house newly released guidance, resources, and professional development. With the kickoff of school system planning for the 23-24 school system planning process, a new math funding opportunity option is embedded in Super App, aimed at funding the purchase of math materials, designed to align with high-quality core instruction for the purpose of accelerating student learning. Opening today, systems have the opportunity to apply for a high school pilot of Eureka Math Squared Algebra 1 for spring 2023 pilots of units or the full semester course. Funding for materials and professional learning will be provided to awardees of this pilot. In January, statewide access to Zern will be provided for all K-8 math classrooms. Professional learning to prepare for implementation of Zern school accounts will begin in November. More details on all these key events are included at the end of today's webinar. And now I would like to introduce Corinne Mitchell with Zern, one of our high-quality curriculum partners, who is here today to share a new study that makes the case for learning acceleration and the impact this approach has at scale on student outcomes.
Thanks so much, Dr. Chesson. I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you today. I'm Corinne Mitchell, and I have the privilege of working really closely with schools and districts and state leaders in Louisiana as they use Zern to transform math learning. I joined Zern after serving as a school leader and teacher for many years. It was during my years as a school leader that I realized our approach to intervention was not working. I remember observing our middle school math intervention time and seeing students frustrated by doing practice sets and mini lessons from prior grades. Teachers also felt a little anxious because what kids were working on was disconnected from core instruction, and they wanted to teach the grade level content that they and their students were going to be held accountable for. I struggled with a better way to support these students until I discovered Zern. I was immediately intrigued by the idea of providing individualized, just-in-time coherent support right when students needed it. So today, I'm really excited to share our new research on learning acceleration. And we're going to dig into math to actually see what learning acceleration looks like in practice. And lastly, I'll talk about how Zern can support learning acceleration programmatically across schools and systems. So before we dig in, a little background on Zern for those that are less familiar. Zern is a nonprofit. Everything we do is driven by the belief that all kids are math kids. And our work is focused on supporting teachers with research-backed materials and digital lessons that give students the opportunity to deeply explore grade-level math concepts with built-in differentiated support. Zern's currently used by 1 in 4 elementary students and more than 1 million middle school students nationwide. We've amassed the largest data set on math learning in the nation based on more than 11.5 billion math problems completed on our platform. And as a nonprofit, we're uniquely positioned to ask questions and share insights from this growing data set to help identify breakthroughs in math teaching and learning. So since the start of the pandemic, we've been looking at student struggle in math to answer a question that's top of mind for educators. What strategies will help all students catch up and move forward in math? So to answer this question, when Zern researchers analyzed 5 million teacher instructional decisions made from more than 600,000 elementary and middle school students during the 2021 and 21-22 school years. These students represented all 50 states in 1st through 7th grades. We actually just completed 8th grade content last week, so at the time of the study, we didn't have 8th grade in our data set. Zern researchers were able to look at the same student multiple times over the course of those 2 years. We used a fixed effect model, which means that we looked at the impact of each intervention strategy, remediation or acceleration, on the same student. So I'll explain the progression that we analyzed. Imagine a student, we'll call her Brianna, repeatedly struggling in math. Throughout the year, sometimes Brianna received a remediation intervention where she practiced skills that she didn't master from previous grades. And sometimes she received a learning acceleration intervention where she received just-in-time foundational support connected to the grade level content she's learning. We looked at each instance where she first repeatedly struggled and then received one of those types, 2 types of interventions. After that intervention, she returned to grade level learning. We then looked at whether or not she struggled on that next grade level lesson. So this means that we weren't comparing students who were remediated to a different group of students who were accelerated. We're comparing each student to themselves to see which strategy worked best for them to reduce their struggle and help them move forward in math. We looked at this same progression more than 5 million times for 600,000 students across the country. Researchers then honed in on student demographics to see if there were any trends. To do this, they used school-level demographic information to measure how often a specific student, a group of students, experienced remediation versus learning acceleration. We don't collect demographic data for individual students, only at the school level. So because of the scale of the data set, we can draw conclusions about the classrooms in schools that have a majority of students that are Black or Latino, for example. Other top researchers and research institutions use our data in this way to draw similar conclusions. So from this, we learned a few remarkable things. So first, Zern researchers found that when students experience learning acceleration, they struggle significantly less, 17% less, than when they receive remediation. Further, when a student is consistently experiencing learning acceleration, they complete twice as many grade level lessons, allowing them to struggle less and catch up and move forward. In this slide, the vertical axis shows the percent likelihood that a student repeatedly struggled when they returned to that next grade level lesson. The horizontal axis represents the type of intervention decision the student experienced, whether that was remediation or acceleration. And again, we looked at this for individual students across a group of 600,000 kids across 1st through 7th grade. When we're comparing these bars, it's important to remember that the same kids are in both the gray and blue bars. So when a student experienced learning acceleration, they struggled 17% less than when the same student experienced remediation. By comparing students against themselves, this new data shows that teachers' daily intervention decisions can help students catch up and move forward. This result is striking and somewhat counterintuitive. The intent of remediation is to help avoid struggle, but we see from the data that a student's actually likely to struggle more. When students receive just-in-time support from connected prior concepts, they can move forward in their grade level content with less struggle. So unfortunately, we also saw students in low-income and majority Black and Latino schools are more likely to experience remediation than their white and wealthier counterparts, even when they already demonstrated the same level of success with grade level work. So this figure represents students by subgroup and the likelihood that they would be remediated after demonstrating success on grade level. We see only 9% of students in majority white schools were remediated, and in contrast, 15% of students at the same level in majority Black and Latino schools were remediated. And we see a similar trend based on income. 15% of students enrolled in low-income schools were remediated, compared to 8% of students in wealthier schools. So in the face of this really unfortunate disparity, we then asked, how effective is learning acceleration by subgroup. And we found reasons to be optimistic. The data show that learning acceleration works for all students. Our analysis finds that learning acceleration relative to remediation has a consistent positive impact for students at majority low-income schools and students at majority Black or Latino schools. In this chart, the horizontal axis is divided into 3 groups of students. So all students in our analysis on the left, students in majority low-income schools, and students at majority Black or Latino schools. The vertical axis shows the likelihood of repeated struggle on the student's next grade level lesson. For the first set of bars on the left, this is the same data that we saw a few slides ago. For all students, we see that students experiencing remediation are 17% more likely to struggle on subsequent grade level lessons relative to when they experience acceleration. The next 2 categories break that down by subgroup, and importantly, we see similar impacts of acceleration versus remediation. When students at majority low-income schools experienced acceleration, we see a 19% reduction in struggle. And similarly, when a struggling student in a majority Black or Latino school was assigned learning acceleration, they also struggled 19% less when they were remediated. So now that we're grounded in the research, I want to turn to what learning acceleration can look like in practice. So Zern has multiple layers of built-in learning acceleration in every digital lesson. While more traditional curricula teach grade level math content with the assumption that kids have mastered every concept from prior grades, we take a different approach. Zern digital lessons scaffold grade level learning with real life context and visualizations that intuitively make sense to kids and draw connections to prior concepts that serve as an on-ramp to new learning. So when a student struggles, Zern brings that connected foundational content right into grade level learning to help kids catch up in the context of their grade level math. So let's think about this in context and take a look at this problem from 5th grade. 2 divided by 1/2. The question assumes that students can use what they learned about division and fractions from prior grades. So thinking back to our example student, Brianna, she doesn't quite have a full understanding of this concept yet. And she comes across this problem in her 5th grade lesson, and she's stumped. So in a traditional remediation approach, Brianna would have been asked to complete a lengthy review of whole number division and foundations of fractions. She might have been given worksheets to practice adding and subtracting fractions from 4th grade, but that won't help Brianna understand this division of fractions problem. She could spend weeks or even months catching up, all while falling behind on her 5th grade content. So with a learning acceleration approach, Brianna can catch up right here and keep moving forward in her grade level math unit. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to switch gears here and jump into our platform. Here we go.
Let's try another one. I still have 2 pounds of tomatoes. If I put 1 pound in each of these bowls, how many bowls will I use?
So just as a little bit of context here, to start off this 5th grade lesson, we asked students to divide 2 by 2, and Ms. Joseph, our on-screen teacher, has 2 pounds of tomatoes and puts 2 pounds in each bowl. These friendly questions from 3rd grade activate what students already know, and along with the concrete representation of bowls and tomatoes, gives them a strong entry point into this new concept. So one of Zern's central learning principles is that math is just a few big ideas, and there's always a way in. So friendly on-ramps like concrete problem context and visual representations help students build and strengthen connections to what they've learned before. They help students see structure, make sense, and have something besides just a list of steps to fall back on when they get stuck or encounter a new or tricky concept. So that's what we're starting with here, or starting to see here. Leveraging the context of the bowls of tomatoes, this mini lesson is helping Brianna understand the known parts of the problem, the total amount of tomatoes, and the size of each group of tomatoes, she can relate the unknown factor, the number of bowls, to the number of groups. So I see here that 2 divided by 1 is 2. And that means that Miss Joseph will use 2 bowls. Let's skip ahead a little bit in this lesson to see where it goes next.
Let's solve one more. It's a little bit trickier. I still have 2 pounds of tomatoes. If I put 1/2 pound in each of these bowls, how many bowls will I use? What division expression can we use to solve?
So we started with a problem-solving context, made it accessible through video and discussion, and then eased in with problems that students understand. So now we can put in front of Brianna 2 divided by 1/2. The problem hasn't changed, the context hasn't changed, and the thinking hasn't changed. Brianna can solve this 5th grade problem the same way she solved the 3rd grade problem. And this new learning is a logical extension of work she's been doing all along. So we have a 1/2 pound bowl, and Brianna will do the same thing that she did with the 2 pound bowl and 1 pound bowl. So she'll pick 2 divided by 1/2. Let's move ahead a little bit more and see another example.
This time, we'll use paper to help us solve. This rectangular paper represents our 2 pounds of tomatoes. First, let's cut the whole into 2 equal units. How many pounds of tomatoes does each piece represent?
So moving students from the actual bowl of tomatoes to now a piece of paper and next to the tape diagram is really significant here. It's an intentional move to help students see the value in the tape diagram as a powerful tool to use when they encounter more challenging problems with division of fractions. Primed by the lesson's opening questions, I know that each piece of paper represents 1 pound.
Each piece of paper represents 1 pound. I'll put 1/2 pound in each bowl, so I'll cut each whole into halves. How many halves are in 1 whole?
And now we're getting closer to our answer. Through representation, I can see that there are 2 halves in 1 whole. And I can actually count to solve the problem using representations. 4 halves and 2 wholes. This learning acceleration approach allows me to use visualization and representation to now understand that 2 divided by 1/2 is 4. And this is truly learning acceleration in action. Students are deepening their understanding of fractions and division, and at the same time, they're exploring this new concept of dividing whole numbers by unit fractions. So let's shift gears a little bit and take a look at how this type of approach impacts students' academic growth. So as a nonprofit, our one goal is to drive student achievement in math. And it's why we built Zern, with learning acceleration in mind from the beginning. We regularly assess Zern's impact on students' academic outcomes to learn how to best support educators using Zern. And as our most recent findings showed, no matter the student's background, learning acceleration was key in helping moving students forward with their math learning when compared to remediation. Knowing that, I wanted to share some additional results from a study where we looked at students at the lowest levels of math proficiency. So this analysis is from 2 large districts where 30 to 50% of students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Our analysis was based on measuring the impact of consistent Zern usage on students who scored at the bottom 2 levels on state assessments in 2019. We then considered what was expected from each of these student subgroups in terms of growth over 2 academic years and translated that growth into years of learning. This expected 2-year growth is represented by the blue line there in the middle. The purple dots represent consistent Zern users. students who completed 3 or more digital lessons each week, and the orange dots represent students who did not use Zearn. So in both districts, students who used Zearn met or exceeded the 2-year growth benchmark, growing more than 2 grade levels in 2 years, despite the learning disruptions from the pandemic. In District B, students who scored at the lowest level in 2019 grew 3.1 grade levels in 2 years when using Zearn for acceleration. In other words, throughout 2 years of pandemic learning, the most struggling students experienced more than an additional year of learning beyond the expected 2 years of growth. And for many students, this growth meant moving out of the lowest level of math proficiency. So this figure shows the total students in District A who scored at the lowest level, level 1, on state assessments in 2019. The green dots on the right represent the students at the lowest level of proficiency who consistently use Zearn. The gray dots on the left represent students at the lowest level of proficiency who did not use Zearn. So if we look at the students who use Zearn in green, 39% of students at the lowest level of proficiency in 2019 moved up at least one level, one full level in 2021. Compare this to the non-Zearn students in gray, where only 4% of students at the same starting level moved up one level. We saw this across all levels of student proficiency in both districts A and B. Students who consistently use Zearn were more likely to move up at least one full level on state assessments than students who used a high quality curriculum alone. So while many factors influence student achievement, this analysis provides promising evidence that Zearn's embedded learning acceleration supports help all students catch up on unfinished learning and access grade level math, even and especially for those students who are furthest behind. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share those results with you all. It's wonderful to be here. And I want to turn it back to Dr. Chasson. Thanks.
Thank you, Corinne. I hope you all enjoyed viewing this amazing impact data and the real life example that Corinne was able to share of what accelerating learning looks like in the context of a child's math learning journey. I think that's so important for us to all really wrap our arms around this concept of what accelerating learning actually looks like for a child in a classroom. So with that, we will close today with our call to action. I have a few more slides to show you all to dig into what are some next steps following today's webinar. And so we are very excited to be able to launch our Louisiana Math Refresh Library. All of our guidance and support for this initiative will be housed there. Resources releasing in November will include planning support and guidance for system and school leaders. We'll also have access to professional learning resources through this library. The Math Refresh Library will be the location for system and school leaders, coaches, master teachers, and teachers to reference for all information on this initiative. Within Super App this year, school systems can apply for funding to directly support the materials refresh component of this initiative. This is an additional opportunity for school systems to purchase additional resources designed to align with high quality materials for the purpose of accelerating learning for all students. So you all can look out for that in just a few weeks when we launch our new school system planning cycle. Also, we are partnering with Zearn to provide access to Zearn school accounts for all public elementary and middle schools at no additional cost to school systems. Schools will have full access to Zearn materials beginning in January and continuing through the end of the 2023-2024 school year. The Zearn resources can be used as core materials or alongside other high-quality materials as acceleration support during extra learning time, such as tutoring or summer learning programs. All public schools, kindergarten through 8th grade, will have access to Zearn school accounts, which offer the following: materials access for all students, administrators, and teachers at the school within one school account, premium features, and content to support the implementation of ZERN. Training for teachers and leaders will be scheduled and available in both virtual and in-person formats. Information on the dates and locations of training will be available in our future newsletters and monthly calls, as well as shared within the Math Refresh library. Systems who use ZERN as their core curriculum will still be responsible for the purchasing of their print materials. We're also excited to announce applications for a pilot of Eureka Math Squared Algebra 1 for high school classrooms, opening today as a part of our Louisiana Math Refresh initiative. Systems have the opportunity to apply for funding to support a spring 2023 high school pilot of this newly identified high-quality math curriculum. The purpose of the pilot is to provide early access for interested systems to try out the new resources in one or more Algebra 1 classes. Systems selected for the pilot will receive a special funding allocation to support the purchase of the high-quality materials and related professional learning. Applications are due October 18th. Notifications will be made in early November with anticipated allocation sent to Bessie for approval in December. You can consult the Eureka Math Squared Algebra 1 pilot overview for details and eligibility requirements. Next, we have partnered with CERN to offer webinars similar to this one in early November for teachers and other school-based staff. These webinars will be specifically tailored to educators who serve the specific grade bands listed on this slide. So interested participants should register for one of these options, K2, 3-5, or 6-8. Registered Louisiana educators and education leaders who are unable to attend the live webinar will receive a recording after the event. Please share this information with the appropriate staff in your systems in schools. If you all have any questions about our Math Refresh initiative, any of the next steps that were named out today in the webinar, you can feel free to contact stem@la.gov. I know we've had a steady stream of questions coming in today during the webinar, which has been awesome to see everyone get really excited about the work that we are doing and will continue to do. Our Math Refresh initiative is really aimed to support school systems and schools and enhance the work that you all are already doing around math. So we're excited to hear any feedback and input on this initiative as we all do our best to encourage and support you all in accelerating learning for our students in mathematics. So please feel free to reach out to that email on this slide for any questions, comments, or input on our Math Refresh. We thank you all for joining today's webinar. Please look out in newsletters and future school system leader calls for additional information and what comes next. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Corinne, for the stellar presentation. We appreciate you being on with us today. You all have a wonderful rest of your day.